Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to break down what is probably the worst take on dating preferences I've ever heard. So let's begin.
Do y'all remember that button video that was like going viral and people were like all talking about the fat girl who was like criticizing Asian men and then the Asian man that rejected her because she was fat? I want to talk about these comments saying shit like, if she's allowed to have her preference for Asian men, then he's allowed to have his preference against fat women. I need y'all to understand for like 2 seconds that a fat person being like a race fetishizer doesn't give you free range to be a fat phobe. She was weird. I'm not gonna sit and defend either of these motherfuckers, obviously, but like, the dude was hugging people and rejecting them based on their size. Dude, if you don't want to do a blind date, then don't do a blind date. Go make a Tinder and swipe all the skinny bitches. No one fucking cares. But that's just corny. This really goes back to the lack of understanding y'all have for what a preference means when it comes to dating. A dating preference would be something like me not really caring about someone's situation, but like preferring. That's a preference. I prefer. I'm not opposed to. That's a preference. Liking one thing over another. Preferring it over the other. Or the others. You saying, I don't like fat people? That's not what a preference is, buddy. No one's forcing you to like fat people by asking you to unpack why you feel that way. But like, don't sit here and act like it's like this preference that you're like so very entitled to having. Like, no one's taking anything away from you by saying like, hey, it's not like an entirely original thought that you aren't attracted to fat people. We've kind of all been taught that fat people aren't attractive. Maybe if you had your own original perspective for 2 seconds, you would be attracted to some fat people. And that's the thing is, that y'all don't want to talk about, is a lot of you motherfuckers are attracted to us and don't want to admit it. The amount of people that are so into me but so ashamed of it.
So if you don't know the video she's talking about, there was a blind date where the people were blindfolded and one dude was hugging women to see how big they were, and this other woman was super into Asian men and was kind of weird. So I started out on the same page with her when she was talking about how weird the dude was and how weird the woman was. Yes, I personally loved it. It is peak reality/trash TV, and I live for it. It's entertaining, and that's why it went out on the internet. But yeah, the people involved were weird. But after she mentioned that, her speech took a turn when she started saying how he doesn't understand what a preference is. And the example she used of what a bad or invalid preference was a bottom preference, which is probably the worst example she could have used, because everyone is allowed hard limits on what they want their partner's private parts to be. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to call having a preference on what your partner's private parts look like a bottom preference. And her definition of preferences in the actual usage of the word doesn't make sense. In some contexts, saying, I prefer this over this means that you're okay with either item, but you would prefer one of them. But in other cases, a preference means that you will only take one item and not the other. And that also applies to dating. And then towards the end, there are multiple quotes that need to be discussed. She said, not wanting to date fat people isn't a preference. And then right after that, she said, nobody is forcing you to want to date fat people by asking you to unpack why you feel that way. It kind of does seem like you're trying to force people to date fat women by saying that anyone with a preference to not date fat women has an unfair bias against fat people that they need to unpack. So if not forcing, you are at least heavily suggesting and kind of demanding that people be attracted to fat people. And then after that, she said, don't act like it's a preference you're entitled to having. It is a preference that he's entitled to having. And again, didn't she just say that she's not trying to force anyone to date fat people? But then she says that you're not entitled to not want to date fat people. It really does seem like she's dead set on making strangers want to date fat people. And then she said, nobody's trying to take anything away from you by saying it's not an original thought that you don't want to date fat people. This dude never said that. I don't think he thought he was reinventing the wheel by not wanting to date a fat woman. But after that, she said, we're just trying to get you to unpack your thoughts around why you don't want to date fat people. So again, she's saying that if you thought for yourself and unpacked your fat phobia, you would start to find fat people attractive. So she believes that the only reason someone wouldn't want to date a fat person is because you have negative opinions of all fat people. And if you got rid of those, then you would automatically be attracted to fat people. Untrue, but okay. And there's also the part of the video where she compares a racial preference for Asian men to body size preferences. Race and body size are two completely different things, and they should not be compared in this context, so I'm not going to bring race into this discussion at all. But let's go back to the earlier analogy with the bottom preference and use her reasoning for why it's not okay to date fat people with that analogy. From what I understand, she was either saying, one, hard limits when it comes to bottom preferences are not okay, just like it's not okay to not want to date fat people, and therefore those preferences are not valid preferences, which is honestly really messed up. Everyone is allowed to have limits on what they want their partner's private parts to be, and it's really creepy to require everyone to be attracted to all sets of parts in existence. Or two, hard limits when it comes to bottom preferences are okay, but they're not an actual quote-unquote preference. And if that's the case, then is there another term for what this type of preference is? Is it just the terminology of using the word preference that's the problem? And we should just be using another word? But this point doesn't even make sense with her fat phobia reasoning, because she said that hard limits on not wanting to date fat people isn't a preference you're entitled to having. So, y'all, I don't know. I don't know what her actual definition of preference is, or what is and is not allowed when it comes to preferences. All I know is that preferences, be it a hard limit or a soft limit when it comes to body size and your partner's private parts, is okay. Those are perfectly valid preferences. And nobody needs to justify those preferences to anyone.
I hate how intentionally dense people are. Like, fat people are like, yeah, I mean, you can, like, have your preferences, but, like, singling out entire groups of people is weird, and also not what a preference is. And on top of that, singling out just marginalized groups isn't a good look. So maybe keep it to yourself, right? And just have those preferences. Shut up, right? But y'all are always like, okay, so what? We just have to be attracted to you fat whale now? What? Everything is in one ear and out the other. Y'all physically can't listen to fat people. It's pathetic. Go outside!
Okay, first of all, she said, you can have your preference, but singling out an entire group of marginalized people is weird. No, that's not true. People do that all the time. I could say I don't want to date someone that's part of a religious minority because it doesn't align with my own religious beliefs. Or that I don't want to date someone with a specific disability because it isn't compatible with my lifestyle. It's perfectly valid to exclude groups of people from your dating preference, even if you would consider them marginalized. And she also said that having certain dating preferences is, quote, not a good look. Just because you look down on people for having certain dating preferences, that doesn't mean they're wrong for having those dating preferences. And saying it's not a good look and berating people for stating their dating preferences isn't going to make people more attracted to fat people when they already weren't. It's only going to make people lie about their preferences. And there are a lot of people that already do that because they don't want to seem judgmental. They're like, they said they don't want to date a fat person? That's awful. It's 2022. We're so far past judging people for their body size. That's so archaic. Even though this person knows that they would never date someone Tess Holliday's size. So saying that people aren't entitled to not want to date fat people or that it's not a good look is going to make most people either double down on that preference out of anger and annoyance, or it's going to make people just lie about their dating preferences so they don't have to deal with you yelling at them for it. which will change very little when it comes to actual dating prospects for fat people. And she also said, at the end of the day, keep it to yourself. I get criticizing people that are super loud about their dating preferences, but from what I've gotten from her definition of dating preferences and her overall opinions when it comes to dating fat people, I'm pretty sure that even if someone was very quiet about their preference of not dating fat women, she would still have a huge problem with it. In the last video, she even said that you're not entitled to having that preference when it comes to not dating fat women. So it seems like no matter how loud someone is about that preference, she still has an issue with it. And then she made this statement.
So what, we just have to be attracted to you fat whale f***s now?
Maybe some of the people in her comments are this aggressive when they ask her questions, but worded in a different way, that was actually a very valid question. It was essentially, does everyone have to be attracted to fat people? And having seen a lot of her other opinions when it comes to dating preferences, I have that question as well. I'm pretty sure a lot of the people in her comments asking her questions aren't as rude and aggressive as she frames them to be. She just doesn't want to engage with the questions, so she frames the people asking them as rude fat phobes instead of people actually trying to understand what she's saying. Overall, dating preferences are okay. Also, bottom preferences are okay. I can't believe I have to specify that, but yes, bottom preferences are okay. That is the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.